Hell no. These guys can't stand each other.
We haven't talked since when I quit. That was
pretty much it.
An unprecedented sort of kind of thing.
Yeah.
Slash grew up chasing the roar of guitars louder than life itself. The moment he picked up a Les Paul, he wasn't trying to create something new. He was trying to summon the power of the bands that haunted his soul. These 5 weren't just his favorites. They were his blueprint, his obsession, his war cry. These are the 5 bands he loved most. 1. The Rolling Stones.
To me, it's very nice to have, but an awful lot of it goes on lawyers. Their overheads are enormous.
Before Slash was Slash, he was just a kid surrounded by his parents' amazing record collection and the sound that filled his house. The music that became the very air he breathed was the Rolling Stones. This wasn't just a band he liked, they were his musical ground zero. He has called them his favorite of all time, specifically pointing to the 4-album streak of Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and Exile on Main Street as his personal gospel. This wasn't just music, it was a feeling, a dangerous, cool swagger that seeped into his DNA. He heard the blues, but it was dirty, filtered through a British sneer. He heard rock and roll, but it was loose, greasy, and felt like it could fall apart at any second. This was the sound he wanted. At the heart of that sound were 2 guitarists, Keith Richards and Mick Taylor. Richards was the master of the riff, the engine of the band. Taylor was the lyrical lead player, the one whose solos could sing and weep. Slash didn't choose one. He took from both. From Keith, he learned that the riff is king, that a simple, powerful guitar part could carry an entire song. From Taylor, he learned that a solo should be a beautiful, melodic journey, not just a burst of fast notes. This weaving of 2 styles became Slash's signature. In Guns N' Roses, he wasn't just the lead guitarist, he was a rhythm player, a riff master, and a soloist all at once. A lesson learned directly from the Stones' playbook. But the influence ran deeper. And this is where it gets controversial. Did Slash just copy their sound, or did he steal their entire attitude? His connection became deeply personal. He became friends with Ronnie Wood, and eventually met his hero, Keith Richards, in a legendary encounter where Richards playfully pulled a knife on him. Years later, as Guns N' Roses was imploding, it was Keith who sat him down and gave him a piece of dark, crucial advice. He compared the toxic relationship between Slash and Axl Rose to his own legendary feud with Mick Jagger, telling Slash not to quit the band because the band itself was bigger than their personal hatred. Was this just friendly advice? Or was it a master teaching his apprentice how to survive the psychodrama of a legendary rock band? The Rolling Stones didn't just give Slash a sound to copy. They gave him a blueprint for how to be a rock star, how to fight, how to survive, and how to keep the machine running, even when you despise the guy standing next to you. For Slash, the Stones weren't just an influence, they were a survival guide. 2. Aerosmith.
Slash! Slash, baby! Dream on!
If the Rolling Stones gave him the swagger, Aerosmith gave him the sleaze. The story is now rock legend. A 14-year-old Slash is at a party, trying to get with a girl, when someone puts on the album Rocks. The music hit him, in his own words, like a ton of bricks. He was so completely blown away that he forgot about the girl, sat down, and listened to the album over and over again. That night, his destiny was sealed. That album, he says, set me off on a path of picking up the guitar. It wasn't just music. It was a revelation. It was the sound he had been hearing in his head, finally made real.
Love playing guitar since I was 14 years old, and it's nice to get recognized for it, and it officially means I've been doing this a long fucking time.
What he heard was an attitude, a specific, potent formula. he would spend the rest of his career perfecting. He called it a manic punk rock attitude and a rhythm and blues sleaziness. It was a sleazy, raunchy vibe that became the absolute core of Guns N' Roses. You can draw a straight, unbroken line from the raw, nasty riffs of Aerosmith songs like Back in the Saddle to the sound of Appetite for Destruction. It's the same DNA, just mutated into something even more dangerous.
And I got a lot of beautiful friends. I got a beautiful bunch of friends.
At the heart of it all was guitarist Joe Perry, a hero Slash worshipped for his raw, instinctual, wham-bam guitar style. Slash loved Perry's sloppy precision, his ability to be messy and perfect at the same time, prioritizing feel over flawless technique. This became Slash's own philosophy. A solo should feel like it's about to fly off the rails, full of emotion and attitude, not like a perfect exercise from a music book. But here's the controversial question. Was Appetite for Destruction just a more extreme, more successful version of Rocks? Did Slash simply take Aerosmith's formula, inject it with more punk energy and street grit, and ride it to glory? The connection between the two is so deep it's almost physical, embodied in the saga of Joe Perry's prized 1959 Gibson Les Paul. Perry had to sell the guitar during a tough time, and it eventually ended up in Slash's hands. For years, Perry tried to buy it back, but Slash refused. It wasn't about the money. It was about possessing a sacred relic, the very instrument that had created the sound that inspired him. The guitar was a physical piece of the Aerosmith soul. In a final, ultimate act of respect, Slash gifted the guitar back to Perry for his 50th birthday, a gesture that left Perry speechless.
I sat in with them, and in the middle of the set, my guitar tech walks up and hands me this guitar. And it was the guitar, and Slash gave it to me.
This story reveals the truth. For Slash, Aerosmith wasn't just a band he liked. They were a form of spiritual inheritance. He didn't just learn from them. He took their spirit, their sound, their sleaze, and even their guitar, and used it to build his own empire. Genius move, or the ultimate act of rock and roll theft? If you're feeling this ride through Slash's wild rock roots, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. There's way more where this came from, and trust me, it only gets crazier. 3. Led Zeppelin. While Aerosmith gave him the raw, street-level attitude, Led Zeppelin gave him the ambition, the complexity, and the architectural grandeur to build rock and roll cathedrals. Once again, the seeds were planted by his parents' record collection. At just 7 years old, Slash heard Whole Lotta Love from Led Zeppelin II and had a moment of pure revelation. It was the first time he consciously connected that huge, sleazy, guitar-driven sound to a specific instrument, the Les Paul. That album, he says, remains one of the coolest records ever made, and was the direct catalyst for his own experiments with distortion and that classic guitar. His reverence for guitarist Jimmy Page is immense, but it's not just about flashy solos. Slash understood that Page was a complete musical architect. He saw Page as the master of the riff, recognizing that Led Zeppelin had the biggest cache of insane riffs more than any other band. But he also saw Page as the master of dynamics, of light and shade. Page's genius ability to weave heavy, powerful rock with delicate, beautiful acoustic passages on songs like Ramble On provided a direct template for Guns N' Roses' own epic ambitions. It's the reason a band could produce both the guttural punch of Welcome to the Jungle and the acoustic vulnerability of Patience. But perhaps the most significant lesson Slash learned from Page was the concept of the guitar solo as a structured narrative centerpiece, a song within a song. He pointed to the frantic standalone solo in Heartbreaker as a pivotal moment in rock history, a direct precursor to Eddie Van Halen's Eruption. This philosophy is the defining characteristic of Slash's own greatest moments, like the meticulously constructed, emotionally soaring solos in November Rain and Sweet Child O' Mine. Those aren't just bursts of notes. They are stories with a beginning, a middle, and a climactic end. So, where's the controversy? Did Zeppelin's ambition sometimes lead Slash down a path of pretentiousness? Was the sprawling orchestral scope of songs like Estranged a brilliant homage to Zeppelin's epic vision, or was it a bloated, self-indulgent attempt to create his own Stairway to Heaven? The depth of Slash's awe for Page is telling. He once described a show where he learned Page was watching from the side of the stage as one of the most intimidating shows I ever did.
7,000 people, Led Zeppelin, and no atmosphere. We've been involved in a lot of things. We've been coming to a lot of conclusions and decisions and starting the record company off, you know. We got mixed up in quite a gargantuous film.
This reverence reveals the truth. Zeppelin's influence wasn't just about learning licks. It was about absorbing a philosophy of musical construction. Page taught Slash that rock music could be both raw and cinematic, visceral and complex. He gave him the vocabulary and the confidence to build his own cathedrals of sound. But with such grand ambition comes the constant risk of collapsing under the weight of your own ego. 4. The Who.
And a lot of the stuff that he did that people laugh about, they think, oh, that was really funny.
Yeah.
When you were there at the time, some of it wasn't funny at all.
The influence of The Who on Slash is perhaps the most subtle, the most intellectual, and the one that separates him from other, less thoughtful guitar heroes. While you can immediately hear the Stones' swagger or Zeppelin's epic scale in his playing, The Who's contribution is found in the very architecture of his songwriting and his approach to the guitar as a compositional tool, not just a soloing weapon. The key text for Slash is the 1971 masterpiece Who's Next, a record he calls one of the best rock records ever, and one that was critically important in shaping his songwriting and rock and roll awareness. His admiration is centered on Pete Townshend, a guitarist he considers one of the all-time greats, but for a different reason than most. In an era where guitarists were obsessed with flashy lead playing, Townshend's genius was in his rhythm, his power, and his songcraft. Slash has called him one of the best rhythm guitar players, along with Keith Richards, praising the aggressive nature of his playing. This wasn't just strumming chords, it was an attack, a powerful driving foundation that gave The Who their explosive energy.
I went back home that night, and I had a studio in my home at that time, and I wrote the song.
Slash absorbed this directly into his own approach to rhythm guitar, ensuring that even behind Axl's wail, the songs had a powerful, muscular backbone. But what Slash truly learned from Townshend was the art of making the guitar serve the song. He recognized Townshend's instinct toward detailed arrangement and applied it to his own work. This is the crucial difference between Slash and a pure shredder. A shredder plays over a song. Slash plays within the song. His solos, even at their most flamboyant, are unforgettable solos within unforgettable songs, a philosophy that is a hallmark of Pete Townshend. So what's the controversial take? The Who's influence might be the very thing that saved Slash from himself. If the Stones and Aerosmith gave him the swagger and the sleaze, and Zeppelin gave him the epic scale, it was Pete Townshend who provided the crucial lessons in song construction, the intellectual discipline that harnesses all that raw, chaotic energy. Without Townshend's blueprint, would Slash's playing have devolved into mere technical exhibitionism, a series of flashy but empty solos? This influence is the structural integrity that prevents his raw power from becoming just noise. It's the why and how that underpins the visceral what of his playing, the smarts behind the swagger. It's the reason his most famous riffs and solos feel like they belong, like they couldn't exist anywhere else, forever intertwined with the iconic songs they inhabit. Still with us? That means you've got the same rock obsession Slash does. So do us both a favor. Subscribe now. We're diving even deeper into the madness behind the legends. 5. AC/DC.
What do you think of that?
Okay.
I run with the bulls.
AC/DC remain accessible to their fans and generous with their time.
In 1980, the rock and roll landscape felt bleak and uncertain to a teenage Slash. As he recalled, it was a crucial point where many of his heroes' bands had disbanded or members had died. Punk had come and gone, and rock felt a bit lost. Into this void of uncertainty came a thunderclap from down under. AC/DC Back in Black. For the 15-year-old guitarist, the album was nothing short of a sonic revelation, a record that just blew me away and served as a battle cry for rock and roll. It was a powerful, defiant statement that stripped away all the pretension and complexity and got back to the raw, thumping heart of what rock should be. What Slash admires to this day in AC/DC is their unwavering, almost religious commitment to the core tenets of rock and roll: raw power, unapologetic directness, and a relentless blue-collar work ethic. In a musical world that can often lean towards complexity, irony, and artistic posturing, AC/DC represents the glorious purity of the form. Their music is a masterclass in economic impact. There are no unnecessary notes, no wasted movements. It's all about the riff, the beat, and the high-voltage attack. The influence of guitarist Angus Young is centered on this principle. While their roles are different, Slash has expressed a deep, abiding love for Angus's guitar style, citing the concise, melodic fury of the solo in Hell's Bells as an all-time favorite. The lesson wasn't about learning complex scales, it was about learning the sheer, visceral impact of a high-energy, pentatonic-based assault. This influence provides a critical counterbalance to his more epic tendencies. In a style that can embrace the sprawling, multi-part epics of Led Zeppelin, AC/DC provides the crucial lesson that sometimes the most powerful statement is the simplest and most direct. Their music is the gut punch that keeps Slash's more ambitious work grounded in a physical, head-banging reality. This influence has remained a constant. He frequently performs AC/DC tracks live, and his recent blues album, Orgy of the Damned, features a blistering collaboration with AC/DC frontman Brian Johnson on a Howlin' Wolf cover. This project perfectly synthesizes his influences, connecting the foundational blues directly with the hard rock legacy of AC/DC, proving they all drink from the same well.
In the beginning, we were never off the road, yeah? And you were sort of like, you didn't know who you were or something. I mean, one minute I knew I was 17, and now I'm
But here's the controversial edge. Is AC/DC's legendary simplicity a mark of genius, or is it just simple? In his love for their stripped-down power, did Slash learn that sometimes the dumbest, loudest, most obvious riff is the most effective? Does this influence represent a potential dumbing down of his more complex inspirations from Zeppelin or The Who? Or is it the secret weapon that ensures his music never gets too lost in its own head, always retaining that raw, thumping, undeniable power that connects with millions? For Slash, AC/DC is the high-voltage sermon, a constant reminder that at the end of the day, rock and roll is supposed to be loud, powerful, and fun as hell. Slash is not a mere imitator of his heroes. He is a true musical alchemist. His iconic sound is a masterful synthesis, a carefully crafted concoction of elements drawn from the giants of rock and roll. He distilled the foundational blues and effortless swagger from the Rolling Stones. He harnessed the raw, sleazy attitude and feel-based attack of Aerosmith. He adopted the epic scope, dynamic arrangements, and narrative soloing of Led Zeppelin. He learned the principles of compositional intelligence and rhythmic power from The Who. And he absorbed the lesson of high-voltage, economic impact from AC/DC. This potent blend, filtered through his own innate, lyrical sense of melody and a rebellious punk rock spirit, allowed him to forge a sound that is both deeply reverential to the past and unmistakably his own. He stands as a monument to the power of influence, a living library of rock history, leaving us to forever debate whether he is the last great student or a master thief who got away with it all. So what do you think? Is Slash a genius disciple of rock, or just the boldest thief in music history? Either way, drop a like, hit subscribe, and stick around as we uncover more untold truths from the gods of guitar.